Kia ora, welcome back to Ask Dr. Jeff. If you're joining us again, if you're new to Ask Dr. Jeff, thanks for joining us. First of all, as always, I'd like to thank Ngāti Whātua Ōrākei for this wonderful opportunity to have this platform to reach so many people at such an important time. Again, these online sessions started at the beginning of our most recent lockdown when the Delta strain of COVID-19 was let loose, I guess, here in New Zealand. And we're still dealing with that now, and things have been progressing. Luckily, we've got lots of other things other than COVID-19 to talk about, even though that is probably the most pressing thing. If you'd like to see some of the old information, please, well, you know how to find it because you found this video, but the first video and last week's video would be the most important for you to watch if you want to get some background information about COVID-19, how the vaccination works, and ways that you can learn to be a bit more careful about the types of information sources you use. So go ahead and take a look at those. And as always, if you have any questions as we go through the kōrero, please just type them into the chat box. We've got somebody helping who screens those questions and sends them to me. So go ahead and put those questions through as you get them. If I don't answer them right away, that's because I haven't seen them yet. So just hang tight. And if you have any questions about things other than what the discussion this week is about, just save those. You can put them through anytime you have them, but we'll probably answer those at the end. But if you have any kōrero specific questions, go ahead and ask them as we go through. Okay, so one of the most popular Ask Dr. Jeff sessions we've had so far was on diet. And if you've been here before, I'm sure you know that I'm a bit opinionated about things, and I'm not afraid to tell you about those things. So the first diet, kōrero, we didn't really talk about diet very much. We talked about things not to put in your diet, like food additives and chemicals, and to try and avoid processed food. So we're going to just sort of springboard off of that a little bit more and talk a bit more this week. Of interest, before we get started, for those of you who have seen the one where we talked about plastics, including plastics that are packaging our food, it was just today actually that I saw a study that's coming out from overseas related to phthalates, which is an additive added to plastic. We talked about plasticizers, that most of the plastics that are in our world are basically 2 or 3 different types, maybe just 2 types, and they add chemicals to those types of plastic to change their properties, so to make them more flexy or to be able to be wrapped into a nice tube so that you can put your food under it. So it turns out that there are increasing studies showing that these things are likely to not be very good for you. The studies need to be done in further detail. But again, we've talked about this. The reason why you can't do a real good study on something like this is to do a double-blind, the ultimate perfect scientific medical test. We're going to do a double-blind study. That means half of the people get the thing, half of the people don't get the thing, and then we compare at the end. Well, it turns out that it doesn't really work if you're going to give somebody something that we think and are pretty sure is pretty bad for you. So even if people volunteered for that, that would be not a test that would be approved, and you wouldn't be allowed to do that. So we can't really test for sure to prove these things are terrible, but we're pretty sure. We're getting there. So without further ado, let's move on to this week's presentation. Okay, so here we are again. You are what you eat. That seems to be locked up here. Oh, there we go. But do you know what you're eating? Part 2. Okay, so again, we talked about nutrition, and I'd really like to take this opportunity to make a difference, to separate nutrition and diet, right? Because diet is everything you consume. And with my patients, I consider that to be any drugs or alcohol that they consume, the quality of the water that you drink. Some people don't have access to clean water like we do. The air that you breathe, so living in China or like Shanghai, high pollution, that's got an effect on you, versus nutrition, which is by definition the process of providing or obtaining food necessary for health and growth. So very important, right? So your diet, you can eat anything and that counts as your diet, but nutrition is stuff that only supports health and growth. So you can eat calories as part of your diet that don't actually provide you any nutrition, calories that don't actually help you to grow, give you essential nutrients, etc. So obviously we're going to talk about that a bit today. So nutrition needs, it's important to recognize they vary based on what you're up to, what else is going on, etc. So for a few examples of this, right? So like a lifter, right? So there were times in my life where I tried to get big, you know, when I went to the gym when I was younger before medical school and you know, ate lots of protein and stuff. And the best resource that I could find on this was something that was done for Olympic athletes. And it was like this article that I found by the US Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, or the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, or something like that, directed to Olympic athletes and high-level athletes. And I'm not going to quote what the amount was because I didn't review this recently because we've been pretty busy with COVID sort of related stuff this week. But it was something like a gram or even more per kilogram of body weight, which is a lot. And I remember from back then saying to myself, God, like, how am I going to eat 5 cans of tuna a day? Because after the first one, it gets pretty old. And in the States, we've got much bigger cans of tuna than you guys have here. So, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure somebody could look that up if you wanted to, but we do have bigger everything in the States pretty much when it comes to food. And the tuna cans are much bigger. And you'd have to eat a lot of those to consume enough protein to support the growth of muscle, right? So we'll talk a bit about macronutrients later, but muscle needs protein to grow. Like, protein is the building block. If you're trying to build a Lego tower, you know, 5 meters high, you're going to need 5 meters high worth of Lego to get that done. Otherwise, it's just not going to work. Well, the same thing happens in your body. You need the building blocks to get the muscle on the other end. So your needs, if you're trying to get big, differ. In fact, if you're a skinny little person with like a type 1 body, or a big person, you know, or like a stocky person who's naturally muscular, your caloric needs, even if you're both trying to grow, are different. And one of those body types will be working against their body type to gain weight, and the other one could probably gain weight just by thinking about it. So another example would be somebody who's trying to trim, right? So your diet, what you consume, the amount of calories that you take in needs to be lessened for you to lose fat. But if the nutritional value is not there, you're gonna play games with your hormones. You're gonna play games with inborn systems that are in your DNA to tell your body to stop burning fat. So you have to eat a certain amount. Starvation doesn't work. And a lot of times, if you go on a really bad diet, like a really severe calorie restriction diet, you're going to gain all that back pretty quickly. The next one would be pregnancy. So this is one area where we do have a lot of good data, because the outcome measure, the thing that we can study, is a baby that you can weigh and you can do a blood test on and all these sort of standard things. So pregnancy is determined. Pregnancy by its nature is an easier thing for us to study as doctors and as medicine, because women tend to present to make sure that their babies do well. And for that reason, we get good data points that we can compare against, versus the average person, we can't really compare very well. Childhood and growth, certain things we know you need when you're a kid. Iron, vitamin D, I think, is a thing that they're starting to do with some of the babies. You get these vitamin D drops. Some people need iron supplements. Kids have growing bones. They need different things. Yeah. And again, training for something. So it doesn't always have to be physical, right? So training for a marathon, are you trying to get trim? Are you trying to have endurance? Are you trying to lift a whole bunch of weight like one time? Are you training for a job? Are you surfing? Do you need to improve your lung capacity? Are you training for an exam? Do you need to keep your brain health sharp so that your brain is as sharp as possible? And so the point is that it's a bit more complex than calories in, calories out. We were even taught in medical school, right? It's easy. If you want to lose weight, eat less calories than you burn in calories a day. Calorie being a standard unit of energy, right? So there's a difference between calories and kilocalories. Don't worry about that too much right now. But the idea here is that if you say burn 3,000 calories in a day and you eat 2,500 calories, you've got a calorie deficit of 500 calories. And so the general laws of physics state that you can't get something from nothing. So to have those extra 500 calories to do whatever it is that you did, something needs to burn from somewhere. And usually that comes from fat. A lot of times that can come from stored glycogen, which is in the muscles. That's a bit outside of the scope for this discussion today, but that is very much related to keto diet. And if you've gone on the keto diet, or if you're interested in the keto diet, we should definitely have a talk about that. And you should book in for that, because this is much more complicated than we're able to do. I think the short story is that, again, we've talked about this before, crash diets or any kind of diet isn't going to work. So unless you're making a permanent lifestyle change, it's unlikely to be effective and might even do the opposite. It might make it harder for permanent lifestyle change to lead to healthy outcomes. So don't play with fire. Okay, so we've talked about this before, and this is the easiest way to think. Would Dr. Jeff say it's okay for me to eat this thing? Well, you want to have a whole food, plant-based diet, and you want to focus on this, right? So whole food means not processed, right? So you can cut up your carrots. I'm not saying that that doesn't count, but not processed in a factory somewhere, because the more people that get involved in the manufacture of your food, from where it's grown to how it gets to you, the less likely it is to be healthy for you, and the more likely it is to have things added to it, or for things to have been done that impact the environment in a way that you wouldn't like. An example of this is in the United States. All the oranges seem to be grown in Florida or California, but I'm from New Hampshire, right? So I understand that, you can't, grow oranges in New Hampshire because it snows there and that would ruin them. And I get that. But you can get oranges year round, shipping them from Chile or from Guatemala, from Mexico. And you have to think about what's had to happen to get that from that far away to you. And so one thing that they do is they pick the fruit too early, and by picking the fruit too early, a lot of the vitamins and nutrients don't get to develop inside the fruit. The other thing too is, a lot of chemicals need to be used, because the soil that they grow the food on is commercial agriculture land. So a lot of times they don't take the care of the soil that they should, and the micronutrients and the sort of microbes and the bacteria and the fungus that lives in harmony with the roots of the plants that tend to grow in a forest, they're all stripped out because of the chemicals that are used. So not only do they have to use a lot of chemicals to just grow the stuff, they've got to use chemicals to keep it from going bad, and they potentially have to use chemicals or cover it in chemicals to prevent it from getting bad in transit, so that you can eat it weeks, if not longer, from when it was removed from that tree. So one option is, maybe we should not eat things that you can't get locally. If you do, it should be a rarity. And if things are out of season, then, well, maybe it's a bad time to make a pumpkin pie. So we'll move on from that there. So we talked about this, grow your own food. And plant-based doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be vegetarian or vegan. Again, we've said, if you want to go vegan, you should talk to me, because there's some nutrient deficiencies. We evolved to eat both plants and animals. Again, without getting into the keto thing too much, the reason I believe our bodies are able to live without carbohydrates is an evolutionary one. And I think that we survived as a species because we were able to do that maybe during an ice age or something. And so we could live in caves when there were no fresh vegetables around. But we live in 2021 in a first world country with lots and lots of grocery stores and lots and lots and lots of farmland, lots and lots and lots of farmland. There's really no reason for us to eat food that has been on a shelf for a long time, if we can help it, with a little bit of creativity. And it doesn't always have to break the bank. Remember, we talked about beans being a really good option for protein that is low in cost, and lots of good healthy fiber in there, and quite good for you, but very, very low cost. Yeah, so we're going to change the way you think about food. So just in summary, just a bit of a review. Your diet is everything that you consume. So we don't want you to go on a diet. It just doesn't work. We want you to make permanent lifestyle changes by modifying your diet. It doesn't have to be painful. The best way to do this is to pick one or two things and just cut that out. The easiest, safest way to do that would be to pick the thing that's got the longest ingredient list. Pick the thing that's in the most plastic. Pick the thing that's in the most boxes, cans, that stuff. Get it out of there. That's the first thing to go. And I'm sure you can find healthier alternatives. One really good way to do that would be to compare packages. So if your kids just have to eat their granola bars, or I forget off the top of my head what you guys call them here, look at the boxes. So I didn't get the time to organize this for you guys this week, but I had meant to go to the grocery store and try and anonymously show you the ingredients list and the label on two different products and help you to decide which one would be best. So we're going to do that in a different way this week, but that's the goal here, is you want to compare things. So if you're not going to eat a handful of nuts and berries as a snack, if that's just outside of the realm of possibility for you, and you've got to send your kid to school with a granola bar, you can pick the better of two bad options. You see, it's not ideal. It'd be best if you made it yourself, but take a look at those ingredients. Take the one with the least amount of sugar. Take the one that doesn't have added things to it, like E numbers, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. And don't forget, the food industry wants to make money. So I don't know. I don't think that they're out to get us. But I know that they know that fat tastes good, sugar tastes good, fat and sugar together, which doesn't exist in nature. There isn't like a plant that grows a fatty sugar thing, as far as I'm aware. And I've done some digging on this. I've looked. It's not a thing that's natural, and our brains aren't used to it and haven't evolved for that. And so there's a lot of studies that say that that combination is actually addictive. And now think about that, right? Big Tobacco knew that cigarettes were addictive and continued to sell them. You know, I think the same thing might be about big food, right? So if you're selling a product, it's pretty good for you as a business person if people get addicted to the thing that you're selling them. So just bear that in mind when you go to eat, because there's a difference between your diet and nutrition, right? So just because it says all on the box that it's healthy, or it's called like a NutriBar, or like, you know, like Mother Earth, you know, or like it's always in a green box, you know, you might be surprised. But I will tell you this, without pulling any specific brands out, if things have multiple colored sprinkles on them, thousands and thousands of sprinkles on them, they're probably not very healthy. And we'll talk a bit more about that. So I know we've done this before, but this is the warning, dangerous chemicals. Should food have warning labels on it? That's actually what the ingredients list is supposed to be, and people have gotten clever. So we're going to just run this list a bit here. Things most likely to have chemical preservatives: candies, lollies, meat products, ice cream, breakfast cereal, one of the highest, chips and crackers, baked goods, terrible. Baked goods are really bad. Soda, fruit juices, terrible stuff in those two things. And again, just sort of piggybacking on what we mentioned earlier about the phthalates. Okay, this stuff, soda, fruit juices, are often in containers that have chemicals put into the plastic that are no good for you. So it's not even just the terrible stuff that's in the liquid, but it's actually the container that the stuff is in. And I think we as a society and as a culture, here we are in COVID-19, we're worried about what kind of stuff we can sell to the rest of the world. And we don't manufacture all our own food. We're not self-sufficient on our food. And I think there's no reason for us not to be. The other thing too is we're trying to ban plastic. So single-use plastic bags, straws, awesome stuff. Most of the plastic is fishing gear. That's the stuff in the Great Pacific Garbage Heap. And a lot of the plastics that are in our environment are in packaging for food items that we get. So it's not, the Great Pacific Garbage Heap is not, you know, like 40 million straws floating around. I mean, they're probably there too, but that's not what's making that up. And those aren't necessarily the things we should be the most afraid of. Now, by all means, it's very good that we're stopping this, and we need to get rid of these things. But the point is, as a culture, as a society, as a clinic, as a people, maybe we should find a way to produce fruit juices, if they must exist, in a refillable container sort of way. Is it possible that manufacturers who provide these foods and drinks to you in these containers should be responsible for making sure that the containers that they give to you are safe, and that even though it says recycle on it and you as the consumer have been asked to recycle and do your part, everyone should be aware that most of the things that you think are being recycled are actually not being recycled. A lot of it's being burned, and again, a lot of it goes into the ocean. So I don't know that it's all up to you, the consumer, to make sure that the right chemical process happens to the item that you didn't manufacture because you bought an item that has stuff in it that you probably didn't realize. You see where I'm going with this, right? So let's talk about this some more amongst each other, and I think that should be your homework, right? Let's make that our homework for the week. Your homework for the week is to talk to one other person about this one bit that we talked about. The fact that less plastic than you think is being recycled. In fact, enormously less plastic is being recycled than you think. And why is it that we don't use glass anymore? I mean, I know glass bottles break and that's difficult and it can be sharp and stuff, but it doesn't make you sick. It's worked since we ever knew how to make glass, and it doesn't affect the flavor of anything too. So that's your homework. What happened to glass? Baked goods, we talked about this. Microwave popcorn, this stuff was bluntly shown to cause cancer in California. They tend to be first on this sort of thing in the States. And there was a lining on the inside of popcorn bags. And what happens when they ban things in the States is they immediately try and sell them in other places. And I didn't look into this. I would have if we had a bit more time this week. But let's just say that it wouldn't be incredibly surprised if all of a sudden certain brands of microwave popcorn that weren't supposed to be manufactured anymore in the States turned up in other countries. Fast food, the #1 worst. Cool. So again, not to be too snarky here, but yeah, that's my warning for dangerous chemicals, and not the governments and not the FDA in the United States. They deem certain amounts of chemicals to be safe. In fact, as long as it fits within certain guidelines when it's tested, as per the manufacturer who provides to the testing facility what they say they're giving, and the understanding that the manufacturer isn't going to change the chemical components of the food they make. So there's a lot of trust involved there with people that essentially benefit better from you buying stuff. And the other thing too is if you wanted to be, like the guy with the mustache from the cartoons who's got the hat on and tying people on the train tracks, like if you were that sort of dude and you owned a food company, like it's not all that hard to sneak stuff in after the tests have been done, sort of thing. And if it sells, like, who's going to know? I mean, like, I wouldn't even be able to test for these things. I wouldn't even know how to go about testing for these things in hindsight. So maybe that's another thing. If any of our viewers know how to do that sort of thing, it might be interesting if we could do a few of our own tests. Yeah. Okay, so the sketchy chat of the week is on E-numbers. Okay, E-numbers I've found stand for European numbers, and these were developed not that long ago in the European Union I'm not even going to try and basically the long chemical name of a chemical that's added to your food is hard to pronounce and understand. Now, I don't want to assume that this was done to be sketchy, but my concern is that I've taught you guys to watch out for stuff that you can't read, and now I'm finding that here, I didn't see this much in the States, so I don't know if they do this in the States. I bet they don't. But here you can see E and then a 4-digit number. And that might represent some of those horrible chemicals that we've talked about. So instead of actually writing that terrible chemical or even an acronym like BHT or something, or DHEA or like whatever, it's an E number, E-4 digits. So a bit sketchy, I think. But you can be the judge of that. And I don't know who decides whether they write an E number or if they write the actual chemical name. I would guess that it's the manufacturer. And then again, think about the guy with the mustache and the top hat. It just seems a bit funny to me. So let's educate you guys a little bit on this. So E numbers, the hundreds are colors. Doesn't seem so bad, right? More sketchy. There was some data that's come out recently that shows that combinations of certain colorants were actually linked to worsened ADHD symptoms in children. So I never realized it was such a big thing. I thought whatever, like you might pee like a little bit darker or something. Some of these chemicals are actually really not that good, and particularly in combination. So this is a sketchy thing we talked about before too. If you look at the plastic that we talked about in the Great Pacific garbage patch, that big dump of plastic. Okay, when the plastic was studied and when these guys did this stuff in labs, they probably weren't thinking that it would be out in nature for 20 or 30 years, exposed to sun, in a mass, swirling with other stuff where it can pick up chemicals from there, get into the food supply by being ingested by fish, which then builds up in the fish over, like a bigger fish eats it and eats a whole bunch of other little fish that have just a little bit of toxin that builds up. It's called bioaccumulation, right? So now you've got a tuna or, like a tilapia or something that someone fishes for and eats, and now they've ingested this plastic through the fish, right? No big deal, right? And then now your stomach, which is very, very, very potent stomach acid, very, very potent acid, can further affect the plastic before it's gone through your system, meaning all the toxins that have accumulated and were initially put into that plastic can hit your stomach and just go and just release into you, right? So it's this concept of not intended to do bad stuff, turned up to do bad stuff. We saw this in the United States with the bald eagle. So the bald eagle is the bird, like the America bird. Like here in New Zealand, we've got the kiwi. In the United States, it's the bald eagle. Like God bless America, like clutching the money, sort of on the dollar bill sort of thing. God bless America. And the bald eagles were at threat. They're actually on the endangered species list, or very close to it, because of DDT, which was a chemical that was sprayed to kill bugs and stuff. And they thought it was the next greatest thing that had been invented. And problem is it built up in the environment, and it started to affect the bald eagles that ate the fish. In fact, it made their eggs brittle. So the eggs of the bald eagle, when exposed to large amounts of this chemical, got brittle and couldn't hatch. And so the bald eagle numbers just dropped right off the cliff, right? So they banned it, and now everything's better and everybody's happy. Here come the bald eagles, right? But the point is, just because it's been, we'll go back to it, just because it was proven at the time of manufacture, yada, 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 down there at the bottom, doesn't mean that we haven't overlooked anything. So just bear that in mind. We know and have proven that some of these things are bad for you. Who would have guessed to combine these four in a lab and see if that does something, right? So hundreds are colors. So it'd be like 2 something something something, or 2 something something something. Yeah, would be preservatives. Okay, and we talked about there's different types of preservatives, so that's a pretty broad category. Number 300s would be antioxidants. 400s are thickeners, emulsifiers, and stabilizers, right? Pretty big, broad category. Now, don't misunderstand. I'm not saying any one of these is safe. This is just a generic lumping to list the names of these without saying the chemical names. 500s are acidity regulators. So those are usually things like acetic acid, which is like lemon juice, and anti-caking agents. This you see in a lot of your spices. So even things that you think are like not, why would they put something in there? Well, your spices, if they get just a little bit moist, like in salt, for example, gets a little bit moist, what happens? It turns into a big old block. You can't sell that, right? So they've got to add something to it so that you don't return it and they don't lose their money. 600s are flavor enhancers. MSG is one good example. That's 6 something something something. Yeah. 700 to 999 would be sweeteners. foaming agents, and gases. So carbon dioxide would be one of them. So don't misunderstand. They're not all terrible. Some of these are things that I said that we've used. Salt will be one of these. Ethylene gas, it will be one of these things. That's something that makes fruit ripen. But if you see E something, 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 pull out your cell phone, right? And just look it up and see what it is. And if it seems sketchy, maybe you should compare it to the product right next to it on the shelf. Yep. So we reviewed this before, but we'll do it one more time. So when you're looking at food labels, use the 100-gram column because it's really difficult to see the other columns. So just ignore all that stuff. It can be kind of overwhelming. And again, I kind of wonder if maybe that's not an accident, right? So pay attention to the 100-gram column so that you can compare. And when you do that, you want to have less than 5 grams of sugar per 100-gram serving. Some of the granola bars that I picked out of my shelf were shocking. And these are things that we give to kids, to our tamariki. So you definitely want to just take a look, right? And even if it means that you're just going to say no, you can only have one of those a day. No, you can't have that other thing. You already had your junk food for the day. You already had your processed food for the day. And that's kind of how we try to do it with our kids, but it doesn't always work. Listen, I get it. We're parents, so you do the best that you can. But 5 grams of sugar or less per 100 grams. Okay. You shouldn't be taking in more than 6 grams of salt per day total. That's total per day. Most of the salt that you get in your diet, if you eat any processed foods, is from that. It's processed foods, eating out, McDonald's, Burger King, that sort of thing has tons of salt. KFC, all that, tons and tons of salt. And it's hard because you can't just sort of read the package. They don't make it easy for you to realize. So that's another option too. If you're definitely gonna go and eat out, they all have to list these things online. You can look up right now how much salt is in a Big Mac, and then you'll realize that you probably shouldn't eat a Big Mac, right? But very yum and designed to be that way. Remember, scientifically designed to be yum. Saturated fat, we talked about oils before. There's good fats and there's bad fats. Saturated fat is generally accepted to be not good for you. Saturated fats in avocados. So I don't know how that personally lies, but I think avocados are okay for you. I think they're healthy for you. But again, saturated fat from meat sources or animal sources is generally considered to be not good for you. So you should minimize that. And you can pick different cuts of meat. You can decrease the quantity that you eat. I'm not saying you have to be a vegetarian, but just recognize where the fat source is coming from. We talked about that, eh? Okay, a couple more things and then we'll get to questions, guys. So fat, we've got this term called macronutrients. So you've got your micronutrients, that would be all your vitamins and your minerals and all the little tedious sort of things. You need certain amounts of this and the minimum of that. Macronutrients are basically the large sort of things that you eat. And there's an app that I don't think I'm allowed to on this platform share with you because it's a paid app. But if you're interested about this, book in with me and I'll tell you about this app that I used. And it's really good because some of these apps, you can scan the barcode of the food. And so you don't have to read it so much. It can be sort of like a beginner-friendly way to get used to reading food labels. And you can also track what you've eaten throughout the day to give you a better idea of how much salt you've eaten, how much fat you've eaten, and which different parts of your diet were broken up. So fats, carbohydrates, and protein. Now, it's really important for you to know this. Fat has more calories per gram than carbohydrates or proteins. Okay, 9 calories per gram of fat, 4 calories per gram of carbohydrates. What does that mean? Less fat is more calories for you. A kilogram of fat has more calories in it than a kilogram of carbohydrates. Okay, so just think about that, right? And the other thing too is that it stores on your body differently. So a kg of fat takes up a lot more space than a kg of muscle. So thin, lean guys can be quite heavy, much heavier than you'd think. So we talked about certain fats being healthy. That's like oily fish would be one good example, or omegas, okay? And again, the difference between nutrition and diet, right? So if you eat fat and it doesn't have anything nutritious in it, that's what we call empty calories. It doesn't provide you any nutritional value. It's just dietary. It's just an intake of calories, and your body is going to either burn it or store it if you can't use it then. But even if it's not used, even if it is used, a lot of the times you're not going to get the nutritional information, the nutritional component from it. Sorry, I think we've got some questions. It looks like. Yep. So, Graham, great question. If it's okay, you just hold tight. We've just got a couple more slides, and then I'll answer your COVID question. Okay. So let's see. Carbohydrates. I cannot tell you how many patients I have come across who don't seem to understand that sugar is a carbohydrate and a carbohydrate is a sugar. So if you're diabetic, for example, carbohydrates are no good for you. Okay, you need to have a little bit, but a little bit, right? Sugar is the worst for you because sugar is the generic term for carbohydrates that are essentially broken down so much that they don't have nutritional value. We call those empty calories, like we talked about, right? So you can eat sugar that's in an apple, right? So there's a surprising and shocking amount of sugar in an apple. So if you're a diabetic, again, talk to me. We'll have a fruit discussion, and I'll definitely give you a link to that app that I mentioned so that you can look into this stuff yourself, because you'd be shocked at some fruits. Oranges, particularly bad. Watermelon is shockingly full of sugar. But even if you got a sweet tooth, I ate a slice of watermelon. Well, first of all, better than a candy bar, right? And second of all, you're going to get some nutrients from that. You'll get some vitamin C. I'm not too fresh on my what's in watermelon nutrients. I'm sure I could look that up, but there's other stuff that's in there that you're going to get. So it's not just the sugar you see, because if you don't burn it, it goes right to your belly, right? Or wherever your fat's going to store. Sugar turns to fat in your body if you don't use the sugar. So that's another bit that I want to talk about. And I want to refer you back to those early slides we talked about, where your nutritional requirements change all the time, right? So some days you should eat way more way more food than other days. Like if you're running a marathon, you're going to want to have prepared for that the night before and eaten food that's going to sustain you during your grueling exercise, right? So you could eat garbage and run a marathon and burn all the garbage off and not store any of it. But if you're like most of us, particularly during lockdown, you're not really exercising as much as you should. I know I've gained some weight. I don't know about you guys, right? So avoid the empty calories. That way, even if you're eating more than you should, you're at least getting nutrients that are helping to improve how your body functions. Yeah. Food as fuel. Yeah. But it can be yummy too. Yeah. So protein, we talked about this. 4 calories per gram. Think about what comes with the protein. Okay. And I've got an argument for everybody, right? So number one, fish, we talked about plastic. It's not terrible, like we said. If you eat mussels, you're going to eat some plastic in the mussels for sure. There's scientifically proven, okay? But the plastic that you inhale if you eat those mussels indoors is going to be a greater amount than the plastic that you consume in your stomach because of indoor air pollution. So a bit of a scary thing to think about, particularly in COVID-19 times. But where do you get your protein? Very, very, very important. Okay. So fish, omega-3s, great stuff. If we could guarantee that the fish didn't have toxins in it, okay, probably the best source of protein that I think. Okay. Soy, okay, if you're a vegan, soy used to be the thing. I was a vegan for about a year, believe it or not. I'm not anymore, but I was back when it was really, really hard to be a vegan, back when I was in uni. I won't tell you when that was, but I was a vegan for a year or so, and we drank a lot of soy milk, and that's pretty popular. I've gone away from that. We mentioned this in previous things. I've actually gone away from what I've gone into. So I started doing almond and cashew milk, but it looks like where those things are manufactured and the kind of pesticides they need to use and the damage that's having on bees and cash crops and the land damage and stuff has turned me off that. So let's just say that soy has been shown to have some hormonal effects. So I think if you eat edamame or something every once in a while, or if you drink a glass of soy milk every once in a while, or put it in your cereal every once in a while, that's probably okay. I don't know that I would do that every single day, or that nut milks are an excellent replacement. I have heard of some products that are available now that are made in New Zealand that are oat milks. There's some issues with that if you have gluten issues, but book in with me if you want to talk about that a little more. But the point here is that even soy, which is a plant-based thing, when it's manufactured and condensed and eaten in large quantities, may cause issues, okay? And again, meats have varying levels of saturated fat. So if you got that app that I can't tell you the name of, you can just punch in how much you're eating. I'd very highly recommend getting a food scale. And part of the best thing that you could learn is this, right? So listen, I'm human too. I make poor food choices sometimes too. I tend to drink more coffee than I should. And I'm just not perfect, but I've got an understanding for like this thing is the equivalent of like 4 of these. And that was from using that app. So to know exactly how much a serving size of meat is supposed to be is very, very helpful. And so even if you just got like a scale and you shared it, or if you got a scale and then after you were done using it to sort of understand how much a serving size of meat is, you passed it to a whānau member, after cleaning it down and all that sort of stuff, that might be really helpful just to help you to think differently about food, okay? So again, you are what you eat. It can be challenging and confusing to know exactly what you're eating if you didn't grow it and cook it yourself. We talked about food sovereignty before. So the more steps between when it was grown and when it gets to you, the less good it's likely to be for you. The quality of your food is very important to your health. So you don't want to eat empty calories. That's just eating to eat. If you eat to fuel, then the food choices that you have, which can be very, very, very yummy, will always have some form of nutrition that's going to support you and your mind. Focus on plants and food that's not processed. Easy to do. Consider where the food came from and how it got to you. And of course, the environmental impact of your food choices. A lot of times the impact is not right there in your face. It can be in the middle of the Pacific in a big swirling heap of microplastic. The food industry wants your money. It's unlikely, like I said, to be the guy with the mustache and the top hat in the cartoons tying people to the train tracks. I don't think that they're trying to take us all down. But I do think that they're trying to get every last dime they can squeeze out of us. And if you have any control or any power in this world, it is what you spend your money on. And that's whether you're rich or poor, what background you come from, your money, your spending, your consumer choices are probably the biggest vote you have in the world that we live in, unfortunately. And again, don't ever go on a diet. It's not going to work. You should modify your diet and change the way you think about food. So if you've got any questions about any of those specifics, I'm going to just check it out to see if there are any. But if you're watching this afterwards, please call and book in. I love having these corredors. Family medicine trained from the United States. And, I'm used to having like a group of people in. Now, I think we can't do that in COVID times, but we could have we could do a Zoom call, a private Zoom call. We could do telephone chat or a group chat, anything like that. And again, we're still trying our best to run as normal as possible, even during the lockdowns, but we're doing most of what we can over the phone. So if you don't need to come in, you shouldn't. And as soon as we can get more people vaccinated and things start to settle, we'll try and get back to regular hours. Okay. Cool. Awesome. So Graham, great question. Had a question about the heart murmur. Good. So Graham, let me see. I feel as though I might have actually been trying to contact you about this today. If you'd like, Graham, I'm going to do my best to answer that right now live for everyone, because you might not be the only one. But if I haven't answered it in a good enough way, I've got somebody else I need to call right after this video. I can call you after that too. Just let them know in the comments section there. The short answer is this. Everything that I've found, they haven't been able to link any specific conditions other than a known allergy to a specific component of a vaccine, or a anaphylactic, that means near life-threatening or life-threatening reaction to your first vaccine, which again, we talked about 5 in a million. So that's 25 people in New Zealand if all of us got vaccinated, according to the math, okay? So they have not linked people with side effects from the vaccine to any sort of preconditions, other than those two things. So what does that mean? Heart murmur or not, recent or not, after the first vaccine or not, you probably should still go and get the vaccine. If it's happened after the first one, if you're concerned, call me, but otherwise, go and get the vaccine. For lack of better terms, we're at a situation now in New Zealand where the horse is bolted, the cat's out of the bag, or the you-know-what has hit the fan, depending on how you look at it. And this is just the world that we're living in now, guys, right? So lockdown worked really well for us. And unfortunately, the Delta strain developed because of uncontrolled sort of spread of the virus, and it was like India or Brazil or something, and now we've got a more transmissible strain of this virus, and lockdowns aren't strong enough to keep that tight. No matter how good we try at the border, humans are humans, and human beings will do things that some of us might say is probably not the best choice to have made. And it is what it is. And you know, as doctors, it's really great because we can support all of those people, whether you make bad choices or not. We all make bad choices, but we're all in this together, guys. And I really mean it from the bottom of my heart. I do not think that this vaccine is going to turn out to be a bad thing. I actually think not getting the vaccine is very, very dangerous. And now, like I said, that the cat's out of the bag, Delta is spreading, the unlinked case numbers are going up and up and up and up. It's just a simple math problem, guys. And the safety that we had and the ability to have level 1 that no other country, like anywhere in the world of our size, was able to do, that's over. That's a thing of the past. And yeah, I'm making some phone calls and talking to some of you. So if you do hear me call, please answer. If you have any questions for me personally, call the clinic and just say that you want to talk to Dr. Jeff about COVID or anything else at all. As always, I really appreciate all of you, and I hope that you all stay safe out there. It doesn't look like there's any new questions so far, so we'll just we'll cut this one a few minutes early this week, guys. If anybody has any ideas for what we'd like to do next week, just let us know. Otherwise, I'll come up with another topic that I think is helpful. And I will try my best to not talk about COVID too much, because we've got this week's, we've got the first week's, we've got last week's, and we're doing phone calls as well. So if there's a specific need for more COVID stuff, we will. But this is sort of general stuff too, guys. And we care about all of you, not just whether or not you're going to get vaccinated. So thanks so much for everybody contacting. Thank you so much, everybody, for reaching to Ngāti Whātua Orake to watch this video, and we wish you all the best. Thank you. We'll see you next week. Ka kite.